Hello and welcome to First Post and our special coverage on Russian President Vladimir Putin's two-day trip to India. Just a short while ago, President Putin and Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India held their joint press conference. They reiterated their commitment to the strong, special, strategic relationship between these two countries. They also announced an economic agreement to increase cooperation in investment and trade between the two countries until 2030. We're also expecting President Putin to attend a special banquet organized by the President of India later today, after which his trip will be concluded. So, looking at the past 20 hours, how has this trip concluded and what are the big takeaways from the meeting we saw today? Let me put some of these questions to my guest, Mr. Sergey Markov, who's a former spokesperson for President Putin and is also a former Russian lawmaker. Thank you so much, sir, for speaking to us on First Post.
Hello. Nice to hear.
Let's start with the optics of what we've seen until now. When President Putin landed at the airport, Prime Minister Modi was there to personally welcome him. They traveled in the same car. They had that private dinner yesterday night. And even today, the body language and the way they were dealing with each other seemed extremely warm and friendly. So how do you see the symbolism and the optics so far of this visit?
Putin and Modi has very friendly relationship. It's absolutely clear for everybody. But also more important that India and Russia has very friendly relationship. By the way, during 75 years, just after India became independent, Russia, which at that time has the name Soviet Union, cooperated with India in many projects. And now it's a continuum. Now, India and Russia under the pressure of Western countries, first of all from United States of America, who want to be dictator of the world, and Russia and India partly resisted to the United States, but mostly doing joint cooperation. Russia absolutely sure that India will continue to buy Russian oil. Nevertheless, that sanctions from Donald Trump, not only because Russian oil very profitable for India to buy, but first of all, because India independent country, India independent great power of the 21st century, which insisting on sovereignty. And we have a very good economic growth in India, and so this is one of the main priority is energy cooperation. It's good not only oil, but also construction of nuclear power station. And not only construction of nuclear power station. Russia also help India by education for the nuclear engineering and generally for the formation of the new sector of economy, right. Nuclear power production. By the way, it's very good from ecological point of view.
Right.
Another direction is military cooperation. It's not only joint exercising of the troops, but mostly it's Russia selling weaponry to India, including very effective S-400 and even S-500. We also know that India decided to rent Russian submarine with nuclear power engine. So this is direction. Another direction, which is also meaning that increasing of the another part. It's meaning that India should also increase its export to Russia. I think it was one of the important issues which both leaders discussed.
Yeah. Now, let's focus on the opening remarks that happened today before the two leaders went into the bilateral meeting. As expected, Prime Minister Modi did talk about Ukraine. He said that India is not neutral, but India is on the side of peace, and he appreciated the efforts that President Putin is making to end the war, of course, on Russia's terms. What did you make of that statement made by the Prime Minister to President Putin? Was it along expected lines?
I think that Vladimir Putin informed Prime Minister Modi about what's happening in Ukrainian crisis, and I think that people in India very well understand, in fact, what's happening in Ukraine. In fact, Ukraine has been occupied by Western imperialist countries, and these Western countries make neo-colonial regime in Ukraine and use it against Russia. It's something like if British or Americans politically to occupy some of the state of India and prohibited Hindu language and uses for the aggression against India. It's something like this. I think that we very welcome that India support peace, because we in Russia want the peace in Ukraine as soon as possible. Because for us, it's partly civil war, because Ukraine was part of the Russia more than 1,000 years, and Kiev was capital of Russia more than 3 centuries. And we will have proverb: Kiev is mother of all Russian cities. It's very well known Russian proverb. So this is what has been discussed. And if India will be more active by promoting of the peace negotiation, which European countries deny to have, I think Russia will be very welcome this more India activity.
Right. Now, the background of this trip, there was a lot of conversation about Ukraine, mainly because President Putin had that big meeting in the Kremlin before he flew down to Delhi. And yes, in the public remarks as well, Ukraine featured. But do you think that this trip was largely more about bilateral issues, about things like trade, defense, nuclear and energy cooperation, that Ukraine was just a side note that the international media just focuses on? Was this really about deepening this special relationship at the end of the day?
I don't think that Ukraine is a center of discussion between Putin and Modi, because India not involved too much in such Ukrainian political struggle, I would say, around. But also it was not only bilateral relations, because India and Russia is great power of the 21st century, responsible for formation of new world, should be more secure and more justice. And it will be the world without imperialist domination of the Western countries. Western countries, America and Europe, should be members of this family of the country's civilization. They should be equal to another nation. We don't want to continue domination of Western countries. And now India, which face very not polite behavior of President Trump, now sees very well. And it means on the practical level, India and Russia and China and Saudi Arabia and Brazil should form this new world. They should create some principles and organization to do it, and there should be some practical actions. Look, for example, what's happening in the United Nations. I think Russia, and I know that Russia will be welcome if India becoming a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. But we should together change situation in the secretariat of the United Nations General Secretary, which is under the full control of the Western country, and which use this for all interests. We should, Russia and India should act together in international organizations. And there are a lot of them, and I think it was one of the important point for discussion between two countries.
Right. Now, let's focus on two agreements that were signed a short while back by President Putin and Prime Minister Modi. One of them focuses on labor mobility, which is basically allowing Indian workers with skills to go to Russia and work in industries there. Now, what sort of a problem is Russia facing in terms of labor shortage, and in which sectors are you seeking Indian workers to come there and work? Could you shed light on some of that?
Russia now has problems with labor. Because this Ukrainian war took a lot of people to the front line, and also because Russian military industrial complex has to work in format 24 hours per day and 7 days per week. And also some of the Russians left country because they concern about their own security. So we have problems. But at the same time, Russia has problems with a lot of migrants, first of all, from the Muslim countries from the Central Asia, because they build some kind of community, and a lot of Russians concerned about this, and that's why Russia come to the model of migration based on the experience of the United Arab Emirates. It means that migrants come not just to the country, but to the specific corporation and without family. And for a specific time. It's the model which welcomed by Russian society very much. And it looks like that Russia and India want to cooperate over this level. We know that India has a lot of free labor, which can come to the Russian economy in different sectors in the Russian economy to work, but which just should thrive, because Russia still has no cooperation of migration from the countries very far from Russia, because now migrants mostly come from the countries which was part of the Soviet Union. A lot of them speak Russian, and they want also to bring their families and to stay Russian citizens forever. This is not sometimes welcomed by Russian society, but Russia with India will start this absolutely new model of migration.
Right.
People who doesn't speak Russian and who come not to become Russian citizens, but to work some time, to take money, and to come back to their family, back to India.
Right. Now, the second agreement that was signed was on shipping, which is basically that Indian seafarers and sailors will be trained by Russian specialists and experts and companies in polar ships. We're talking about ships that work and ply in the Russian Arctic. Now, what sort of a role does Russia envision for India and Indian shipbuilding in the Arctic, and how deep is this cooperation going to go in the coming years?
You know, India close to the very warm Indian Ocean, and it's a very hot temperature in India. I've been in India, by the way, and I recommended everybody to come here. And by the way, also I recommended everybody in Russia to watch some Indian movie, and one of my favorites is RRR. Rice Raw Revolt, I think it's in English, and excellent movie from my point of view. And now it looks strange a bit that India is discussing about Arctic, but Arctic create a very simple way, not on the north of Africa, but more close to way from Pacific, Indian Pacific region to the European markets. And Russia responsible for the North Arctic way for doing this, and China very active in doing this. And if India also will take part more active in those exploitation of this road, Russia will be very welcome. And it could be very profitable for Indian increasing trade with Europe.
Right. Now, finally, just a question on defense. Before the meeting started and before President Putin arrived, there was a lot of speculation that India was interested in buying the Su-57 fifth generation fighter jet and also the S-500 and the S-400 air defense systems. Now, in the statements so far, we have not heard any mention of those deals. Is that how India and Russia operate? The deals are always in the back channel and not necessarily announced at the end of a leaders' summit. Do you think those talks are still happening behind the scenes?
I think there are some negotiation about conditions of the buying for this S-400 and S-500. It's also negotiation, I think, not only about buying such weaponry, but about transforming some technologies of doing this. It's one of the characteristic of the Russia-India trade in those areas. Russia is giving to India not only products, but also technologies, how to produce this product. But it's quite expensive. It also, I think, it's one of the points for discussion. Another is, I think, connected the amount and where it will be produced, because Russia now very intensively use this anti-rocket missiles system, and it's part of the discussion. Another thing is security issue, which is not on the public now, but I'm sure that it's very interesting. This S-400, S-500, and other jets, they come partly from the previous stage of the military world, I would say. Now, this Ukrainian war show absolutely new style of battle, style of war, style of fighting. And I think Indian military is extremely interesting to have experience from Russian army what the modern war in fact is. And I think this is joint exercising of militaries and the exchange of the experience would be mostly interesting for India now, because this new war which we have in Ukraine right now, it's absolutely different compared with what we have been prepared. And this new military world, we open it already, to our regret. India probably can have our experience and to improve its military capacities on extreme level.
Right. Now, I know I said last question, but I have to ask you about energy before I let you go. Donald Trump has imposed 50% punitive tariffs on India, saying you have to cut off Russian energy. But President Putin made it very clear during his statements today that the energy cooperation will continue uninterrupted. Do you think that's India and Russia's way of telling President Trump that you can impose all the tariffs and sanctions that you want, but India and Russia will continue to trade in oil and nuclear energy, and that energy cooperation will not be touched?
I'm absolutely sure that this energy cooperation will be continued between Russia and India, not only because it's profitable for Indian economy. Indian economy is quickly rising. It's need a lot of energy, and it's got one sort of import of oil from Russia. It's not only. Another very important reason that India is an independent great power. It's the signal and the word which Prime Minister Modi, I think, many times told to Donald Trump. Mr. Trump, you shouldn't treat us as you neo-colony. We are independent power. We're not just independent power. We are India, great power of 21st century. That's why we're absolutely sure that India will continue cooperation with Russia. Nevertheless, how high American tariffs could be, even 100, 200, 300 of tariffs, India will say to United States, no, because India independent country.
Right. Well, the business end of President Putin's trip is coming to an end. He's met Prime Minister Modi. The statements are done. The next part, of course, is the banquet, where we'll see a lot more pageantry and perhaps some lighter side of things at the end of this trip. We'll be tracking all of that closely on First Post. But thank you so much, Mr. Sergey Markov, for speaking to us.
I rose from the army with medals on my chest. I spoke of freedom from colonial chains, but I tightened my own. I filled prisons with ghosts. Nearly 500,000 people were butchered under my rule, and I trusted only my paranoia. I gave myself grand titles. I claimed to be Africa's strongman. History calls me something else, the dictator. Who am I?